Hey guys, what is going on? LegoMan123 are back with another video, and welcome to another tier listing making video, where today in this episode I'll be moving on to a different topic, just like I said with last week's episode, and the new topic will be Harry Potter. And to start off, I'll be ranking my favorite Harry Potter movies from 1 to 8. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting off, we have the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone. It really does depend on where you do live, because I'm pretty sure England and around that area have it as the Sorcerer's Stone, whereas America has it as the Philosopher's Stone, but it may be the other way around. So I thought this was such a perfect beginning to this franchise. It was really magical, no pun intended. There, I think the people who played the characters like Harry, Ron, Hermione, I thought they did a pretty good job because they grew up with this series, and I thought it was definitely really enjoyable to actually see that through all the 8 movies. And then, like, the whole sort of plot and all that was definitely really interesting. The beginning was great. And then my favorite part was when Hagrid said, "You're a wizard, Harry." I really loved that part. Just everything was so magical about this. Diagon Alley was so beautiful to see. Hogwarts, especially when they were like in the boat and like the sort of camera tilted up, that was really awesome. I just loved everything about this film, and as I said, I thought it was such a great beginning to this franchise. So for that, I'm going to put it in a perfect movie. Next up, we have the Chamber of Secrets, and out of all the movies, this is by far the longest one, and I can definitely see why, because a lot definitely does happen in this. I really enjoyed seeing Dobby for the first time. I thought it was definitely really cool. The design for him is definitely, I'm not going to say cute because it is kind of creepy, but it's really adorable to actually see him. And then Harry's voice does sort of become a little more deeper, and I thought that was definitely really great. Instead of just having like a different actor for Harry through each movie, I'm really glad they just stuck with like Daniel Radcliffe, I was about to say Hermione Granger, but Emma Watson and Rupert Grant for all 8 movies for Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And I really liked the plot for this one. It began out slow, like nothing really major happened, but then it sort of began to build up, and I really did enjoy that, because with like the whole sort of basilisk, if you look through like say a mirror or a camera, it will only like, I think it's paralyze you, but it won't kill you unless you look at like dead straight in the eyes. So I really liked learning about that. And then the journey in the Chamber of Secrets with Harry and Ron was definitely really enjoyable. The battle with Harry and the Basilisk, meeting Tom Riddle for the first time, and like him spelling out Voldemort with like his name. I thought it was definitely a lot in the Chamber of Secrets. And then I also really liked how Harry and Ron solved it. Instead of just like all 3 of them begin like working as a team, just like in the first one, I really liked. I'm not going to say I really liked it. It was quite sad when Hermione got, like, paralyzed by the basilisk. But it was definitely really interesting to see Harry and Ron actually solve this mystery. But then a pretty creepy part was when they went into the Forbidden Forest. And, like, there was a bunch of spiders there. Aragog was there, who's, like, a giant spider. I want to say giant, yeah, giant spider. So it's definitely pretty creepy with that scene. But also really enjoyable. So for that, I might possibly put it maybe in first position, maybe first position in amazing. Next up, we have The Prisoner of Azkaban, and this was definitely a really interesting start to the film because it had Harry doing, I was about to say Expecto Patronum, but Lumos Maximus to actually read a book, and I thought it was definitely interesting how that did happen, and then it did cut to, like, in the sort of a rainy, maybe, like, afternoon day, and then, like, one of, Vernon's, I think it's his sister or mother, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's his mother, like, come, and just a bunch of stuff. So just like the Chamber of Secrets, this one sort of builds up in a way, but I feel like this one is a little sort of slower because he doesn't get to Hogwarts until maybe half an hour into the film, but I'm not 100% sure on the exact time, so I thought it's definitely interesting, and this one was a lot more darker in my opinion than the first 2, because definitely something pretty scary did happen in like the train part, the Dementor. That thing was pretty spooky, seeing it for the first time, and then like hearing about the Prisoner of Azkaban, who is, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this, Sirius Black. That was definitely quite interesting because we get to hear the side of the story, what didn't actually happen, because the Prisoner of Azkaban, who is Sirius Black, was actually framed for doing a crime he didn't do, and then now everyone believes he's like the bad guy, but he's really not. So I really like that sort of misconception, which we actually do learn like halfway into the film. So that was definitely interesting to learn about. And then once Harry gets to Hogwarts and all that, it's definitely quite more enjoyable because like with the whole sort of dark tone and all that, I liked how we got to have more classes seen. Like we had not transfiguration, we had like this one with like teacups with Professor Trelawney. That was interesting because we got to learn more about like the Grim and all that, who Sirius Black was like an animagus as a dog. So I thought that was definitely interesting. The night bus part was quite cool as well. So definitely a lot did happen in this. But one of the most interesting parts, in my opinion, was the time traveling part, because Hermione has this time turner where she can actually go back. I'm not sure like how far, like can she go back to like when she was in year one. I'm not 100% sure on like how the time sort of part does work, but it was interesting how they actually went back to actually rescue Buckbeak and Sirius Black, and I thought it was really cool just seeing like side by side, so future Harry and Hermione in the past with the past versions like Ron, Hermione, and Harry. So I really like that sort of part there, and it all does sort of link up in a way, because one part was when Hermione sort of stepped on a twig and then like the past self turned and like she thought she saw her future self. So a lot of sort of confusing parts with the time traveling, but it definitely does like make a lot more sense once you actually do watch the film. So definitely a lot did happen in this, and I thought it was quite an interesting ending as well. So for that, I might possibly put it maybe in third position in amazing, because with like the whole sort of wolf part, that was something pretty dark as well, and I believe this movie was rated PG, so that was quite interesting to see for the first time. And like Peter Pettigrew, who was actually the real person who was like working for Voldemort and gave the location up of Harry's parents. So I thought it definitely worked really nicely. Next up, we have the Goblet of Fire, and this was once again a pretty dark movie. I feel like this one was a lot more darker than the third one, because we got to learn about the Triwizard Tournament, where three schools like go into like this sort of tournament and compete against one another. So there's Hogwarts, and then the Bodami Academy, and then like Drumstring. But then I think I'm saying those correctly. But then Harry actually gets sort of tricked into going into the Triwizard Tournament, because it's like Voldemort's whole plan to actually get Harry into a graveyard. So I really did like that sort of part there. And then the introduction to this film was definitely pretty dark, because like we straight away had like a murder, and it was like a sort of vision Harry had, and like the kettle boiled, and then it cut to Harry sort of holding a scar. So I thought that was definitely really cool. And then I really like how like this was the first film we actually got to see the three main characters, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, sort of like split away from one another, because like Ron sort of felt betrayed by Harry because he hadn't told Ron that he put himself in there, or like he got someone else to vote him. So it was the first time we actually got to see the trio split, and I thought that was definitely interesting, because instead of just having like all 8 movies like Friendship and all that, I really liked how we actually got to see them split. But then they do come together again, which I thought was definitely really great, instead of just having them like all split and like then there'd be no other movie. So I thought that was definitely great how they did that. The Triwizard Tournament, I must say, was definitely really enjoyable to see. Like the Dragon Task, I really enjoyed that one. And then we had the Mermaids one in the Black Lake, or like I'm pretty sure it's Black Lake. That was definitely really cool to see. And then the final task, the maze, that is probably my favorite one. But in the book, there's actually I believe it's Sphinx in the book, like halfway through the maze. It would have been really cool to actually see the Sphinx in the maze in the movie. But apart from that, the battle in the graveyard between Voldemort and Harry was definitely really enjoyable, because Voldemort did get reerected, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Peter Pettigrew, who like had this whole sort of, I want to say potion, but like sort of ingredients to bring him back. And then Harry was like the main ingredient, because they needed his blood. So I thought that was definitely really interesting, but also pretty dark. And the duel was short, but I can definitely understand why, because like this is Harry's first encounter with Voldemort, and you really wouldn't expect Harry to just like win straight up after Voldemort was sort of reincarnated, like really powerful and all that. And then it was definitely sad when Cedric did die, but I think it really added to the sort of suffering of Harry, and definitely did shape him definitely a lot after that. And then the ending was like quite slow. It sort of dragged on about like Cedric dying and all that. It was definitely nice how they did include that, and like it had something about like them. No, I think that was the fifth one. I'm thinking too far ahead, but it was definitely interesting how they had that sort of funeral part there. But it did drag on, in my opinion. But apart from that, I would possibly say this was. I really want to say first position for perfect. I'm gonna say second position for perfect. Next up, we have The Order of the Phoenix, and this was once again a pretty dark movie. It wasn't as dark, in my opinion, as The Goblet of Fire, but it was sort of in the middle between The Prisoner of Azkaban and The Goblet of Fire, because, like, this is where we get to hear a bunch of information about, like, Voldemort and a bunch of, disappearances, and, like, they're blaming Sirius Black for it. So definitely a lot did happen in this. And then, like, the whole part with the Order of the Phoenix was definitely really cool. How they had this sort of, like, cool, not cool, but, like, sort of magical group of sort of wizards or auras, both females and males. And I really like the opening to this, where it basically had I don't think yeah, it was like where Harry was in like this park, and like he sort of confronted Dudley, his pretty mean cousin, and like a sort of a storm began to happen, and then like the mentors came, and he did like the Expecto Patronum, which he did learn in the third one, which was definitely pretty awesome. And then I really liked how like he didn't just like leave Dudley there. He like sort of helped him get back to his house or their house, and then like the Vernon, he was quite mean about it. He was like, "Well, you made me Kid Lumpy." Like, I would say, "Well, thanks for bringing me Kid back," instead of just like leaving him there. But no, he was just really mean about it. It sort of begins slow, and then it sort of begins even more slow, because like then there's this escape part with like Kingsley, Mad Eye Moody, who is the real one now. I did forget to mention that in the Goblet of Fire, and then like they escaped on brooms. It was really interesting to see that, just like the landscape of, I believe it was London, as they were like flying around in sort of like maybe midnight-ish, or like maybe around like 11ish, I'm not 100% sure. Then we got introduced to Grimmauld Place, so definitely a quite slow beginning to this. So then they go to Hogwarts, and it's beginning like to be really weird, because the Ministry of Magic is trying to take control of Hogwarts. So I really like that sort of political sort of idea on Harry Potter. We get introduced to Umbridge, who, do not get me started on her. I hate that character so much. She's played by definitely a great actress, but I just hate the character so much. But I think she's definitely interesting in some parts, and then like Dumbledore's beginning to act sort of strange, because he sort of had like this sort of hunch before in like the past, because like these disappearances have happened before, as Sirius Black did say, like this has happened before with like the Order. So I thought that was definitely really cool. And then we basically do this really cool part with Dumbledore's army, but it's more like Harry's army, where he like trains everybody up to like sort of defend themselves, because Umbridge has, I want to say completely taken over Hogwarts, but she's taken over that much that she won't like teach students to defend themselves and protect. So then Harry decides to do that, and I really love that part with like just different classes of Harry teaching him, and I really enjoyed it. That was probably my favorite moment in The Order of the Phoenix. And then like Harry gets a bunch of his friends to actually then, I wouldn't say invade or like rob, I would say like investigate maybe the sort of Department of Mysteries, because like Harry has a bunch of visions in this one. So it's definitely interesting, because I think he only had like one in the past, which was in the Goblet of Fire, and to actually see him just have a bunch of different ones really made it a lot more darker, because they were some pretty serious visions. And then like the parts where like Dumbledore had a sort of a secret weapon, and Hagrid, it was like Groppy. So I thought that was an okay idea, but I felt like it wasn't too necessary, because it really didn't like reappear in any of the other three films, apart from like the Order of the Phoenix, where we got to see him for the first time. And then Bellatrix Lestrange escape was definitely quite interesting. And then a really sad part was when Sirius said like after like all this is done, we'll like be a proper family, move to the country. But then it ends quite sad when Bellatrix, who is Sirius Black's cousin, actually kills Sirius. So that was definitely quite sad. To actually add to it, we had Harry sort of screaming. We really couldn't tell too much, but you could definitely see he was quite upset about it because Sirius was the only family he had left. And then like there's like no music in that part. I think it's just music and it's just like Harry screaming. So that was definitely quite sad. And then we have one of the coolest duels in all of Harry Potter. We have Voldemort versus Dumbledore. That was so, what am I saying? That was such an amazing battle. I love the sort of visual effects, like the water, the fire. And then we have this part where Voldemort enters Harry's body and he has like a bunch of sort of good and evil flashbacks, yeah, and visions as well. So that was quite dark. And then we hear Harry say, like, you're the weak one, Voldemort. You'll never know friendship or love. And I thought that was such a great quote. And then, like, then Voldemort sort of comes out of his body, like, as a sort of a spirit in a way, or sort of, yeah, I'm really not too sure what it is. So that was definitely quite dark. And this one is definitely dark, but not as dark as the Goblet of Fire, in my opinion. So possibly I might put this maybe in third position. No, I'll maybe put it in first position in amazing. Next up, we have the Half-Blood Prince, and this was, once again, a pretty dark movie, and I feel like this is probably the darkest out of all of them, because we get to learn, and it does build up quite a lot, we get to learn the truth about Tom Riddle, his objectives and all that to actually make Horcruxes, which is something pretty dark. And I really liked how it built up. I liked how it just like didn't explain like everything in say 5 minutes. It really did build up, and the title really doesn't explain a lot because it's the Half-Blood Prince, and we expected a character to like be one of the main characters, be the Half-Blood Prince, but it's a sort of a side character, and that is, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this one, it is Severus Snape, and that was such a build up because honestly, I had no idea it was gonna be him, and I really liked how he like said it to Harry, and like just Harry's sort of facial expression did explain it all, like how are you the Half-Blood Prince and all that. So I really liked how it did build up because Harry first gets introduced to the name of the Half-Blood Prince when he actually sees the potions book in Slughorn, sort of potions, and he like opens it up and it says property of the Half-Blood Prince, and we the audience are also quite sort of interested and also excited to like see the build up of knowing who the Half-Blood Prince is. So this was quite a dark one, as I did say, but I really liked how it began off quite slow, so like then it would build up like in the middle of it. So I thought that was definitely really interesting because like Harry, I wouldn't say is still suffering. I feel that's too much, but I feel like he's still traumatized on what happened to him in the previous movie, and I really like that. I like how he just didn't like straight away recover. So I thought that was definitely great. And like it builds up because we get introduced to Slughorn, who is returning because it's the sort of plan. I was about to say Voldemort, but Dumbledore has to actually get Slughorn back, so then Harry can be like his favorite student, and then because his whole plan is to actually get this memory of Slughorn, of Tom Riddle talking to him about Horcruxes, because Voldemort had some idea, but he didn't have too much, because like he basically keeps taking memories out of him from like Tom Riddle or Voldemort, because no one had no idea he would become like the most dangerous wizard. So I really liked how dark this one was, and it really did build up because it first started out a little dark, but then it began to like grow more darker and darker. So I thought that was definitely really great. The part where they found the first Horcrux in like this cave was quite interesting because like we learned that Voldemort made Horcruxes, so then he couldn't get killed. So say if you killed him, he would just come back to life because he had a Horcrux to protect him. But he actually made 7 of them, so if he was to be killed, he would just come back over and over again. So I thought that was something pretty dark. And then like the cave part, we actually get to see the Horcrux for the first time, but then at the end, we learned that it's a fake, which was quite interesting. I really liked how like they found a Horcrux and then boom, it was just like the proper Horcrux. I really like how it built up for the next movie. And then a really sad part happened when Dumbledore did die. I really didn't expect that to happen, but it was all part of Dumbledore's plan so that Severus Snape could trust. Well, no, that Voldemort could trust Severus Snape because he did actually kill Dumbledore. So I really like the whole sort of plan Dumbledore had throughout this movie. So for that, I might possibly put it maybe in maybe third position in amazing, because if you were to watch this for the first time, I feel like you would have to watch it a little more than once, maybe like 3 times, because there's definitely a lot in this, and to actually get a sort of grasp of it, to actually understand this, I feel like you have to watch it more than once. Next up, we have the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and this was a sort of continuation from the Half-Blood Prince, because we learn in the Half-Blood Prince that Voldemort split his heart into 7 parts, and the only way to kill him for good is to actually destroy all 7 Horcruxes and then him. So I really like the sort of mystery feel of this one, because we had Harry, Ron, and Hermione trying to hunt for all 7 Horcruxes, and I really liked how it didn't take like one movie to finish the job. It actually took 2 movies. The beginning of the Deathly Hallows Part 1 was something pretty dark, and I thought it was quite serious, because at Malfoy Manor, who are the Malfoys are some pretty big Death Eaters, and they do serve Voldemort. They had this meeting just with a bunch of other Death Eaters talking about Harry, when he's moving and all that, a bunch of information about him, and I thought it was definitely really interesting how they talked about that, and then we actually get to see Voldemort kill, I would say, maybe Severus Snape's friend who's at Hogwarts, but I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was quite dark to actually see that. But then it cuts to Harry, and we learn that Harry is underage, which means if he was to, say, take one step outside of his house, or pretty much go anywhere, the Ministry of Magic would know straight away, because he's under this, underage spell, I believe that's what it's called. So, the Order of the Phoenix make this really cool plan, which is definitely really interesting. It's called the 7 Harrys, which means they're all take Polyjuice potions, which means they would turn into Harry, so then they get to a safer spot, to protect Harry and all that. So I really did enjoy that, the build-up for that was definitely great, and then as they fly away, it just goes straight into action, because, they're battling Death Eaters and all that, and, Hagrid was trying to get Harry to safety, because Harry wanted to help his friends, but Hagrid had strict orders from Moody to get Harry out. So that was definitely quite serious. And then there's this really sad part when Hedwig dies. That was so sad to actually see her die. She was protecting Harry, which he says may have gave him, may have gave the real Harry away. So that was definitely sad. And it they go away. And Harry and Voldemort have a very short sort of battle, because we learn that Voldemort and Harry's wand are built of the same core. We actually got a brief sort of idea of this in the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, but we didn't know it was actually Voldemort's wand. So basically, none of them can harm one another, even if they do the most deadliest spell. So Voldemort asks for another one, and he actually uses Lucius Malfoy's wand, but it kind of fails on him because Harry beats him. So I thought that was a really nice sort of brief, short battle. But then it cuts to Harry and Hagrid going to the Burrow. So I thought that was really cool, and it sort of begins to build up even more and more, because each of the Harrys come back and they sort of change to themselves again. So I really liked that. Just a lot of stuff did happen in this movie, and then it sort of begins after maybe say 45 minutes, because there's this wedding scene of Fleur and Bill Weasley. I thought that was quite interesting. Instead of just having a bunch of sort of darkness in it and all that, they had a bit of happiness in it. So we get to learn about Rita Skeeter, who went into Godric's Hollow to actually learn more information. And I thought that was definitely cool, because we get to hear it from 2 different people, going back and forward. So I thought that was definitely great. So then it does continue or build up more into the film. So I really like that. And then after that, they actually begin to like go on a journey to hunt all the Horcruxes. I thought that was definitely really enjoyable. And then halfway through the film, they actually have to get into the Ministry of Magic, and that was really cool because they once again use Polyjuice Potion because Harry is now a criminal. I'm not 100% sure on exactly why he is, but if he's caught, I think they have to bring him into Voldemort. I'm not 100% sure. So that was definitely interesting how like the hero Harry now was a criminal, and then once they get into the Ministry of Magic, there's like this whole sort of part there that was really enjoyable. And then later on in the film, I really liked how like the friends once again split, just like the Goblet of Fire, when Ron actually sort of splits because the Horcrux which they wear is a necklace which they do find in the Ministry of Magic part, and like the sort of Horcrux has like dark power in it, so it sort of makes you more angry and sort of makes you like quite frustrated at one another. So that was really interesting to actually learn about that, or sort of pick up in a way. So then Ron leaves, and it was definitely sad with that part. And then Harry and Hermione do continue the journey together, and I really liked how they just like didn't give up and say we're not doing this without Ron. I really liked how they pushed through that and they sort of continued. So then their journey does take them to Godric's Hollow, which was Harry's home as a baby and where his parents did die. And I really liked how we actually got to see a grave with Harry's parents on there, James and Lily. So that was definitely quite sad to actually see that. And then there's this part in a house in Godric's Hollow where Bathilda Backshot, I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's actually possessed by Nagini, who's like inside her skin and all that. Something pretty weird and just pretty strange to actually think about. So there's this whole battle with Nagini and all that. So that was definitely quite cool. And then we actually see them, I think it's like evaporate, like something along the lines of that, how they sort of turn and like sort of disappear in a way. I'm pretty sure that's how they do it. We actually learn that Harry's wand was actually damaged when Hermione tried to do something with it. So that was quite sad to actually learn about that, because this had been Harry's wand since the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone. And then they actually have this part where Harry is just sitting by a lake and he sees this Patronus of a stag, and I think he knows it's like his mum's sort of Patronus as a stag, but I don't think he does know that. And like we learn that the sword of Gryffindor is actually in that lake, where the actual sort of sword is the only thing what can destroy a Horcrux, and we do learn that from the Ministry of Magic in the sort of early parts of the film. And then sort of Harry goes under there, but then something pretty interesting happened where like the Horcrux began to sort of drown him in a way. It wouldn't make him escape from like the hole he made. So I really like that part because it just shows how powerful and dark the Horcruxes are, and he does get rescued with like the Sword of Gryffindor by Ron, which was definitely quite cool to actually see them joining one another and becoming friends. And then they do destroy the Horcrux with the sword, and then as Ron and Harry come to like the tent where Hermione was, Hermione's quite angry at Ron for like leaving them and all that. So I really liked how Hermione didn't forgive Ron like straight away. She was quite angry and like annoyed at him. And then there's this whole sort of chase part in the forest from the so-called Snatchers, who I believe work for like Lucius Malfoy, or just like the Malfoys, and then I think their sort of real master or like sort of lord is Lord Voldemort. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And like they do get taken to Malfoy Manor, and then there's this whole sort of part there where Harry and Ron are in a jail cell, and we get to see that Ollivander, who is the wand person, I don't think he's a maker, but he might be, and he was actually captured, and then also Luna was, and then Griphook, who is a goblin at Gringotts. So a lot did happen in this whole sort of Malfoy part. There was a battle it was a short battle, but I thought it's definitely really enjoyable. And then there's this really sad part when they do the evaporating thing where Dobby is doing it, and it was really sad to actually see him be killed at the end by just like a sort of small dagger going into him. That was really sad because he's one of my favourite characters, and to actually see him die in Harry's arms was quite sad, because in the second movie where we actually got to see Dobby for the first time, Harry says, like, never try to save my life again, and Dobby did pay the price by actually saving Harry Potter and his friends, so that was quite sad to actually learn about that. But apart from all that, I would probably say this movie would be maybe third position in perfect. And to finish off this magical franchise, no pun intended, we have the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and I must say, this is what all 7 movies were building up to. A pretty epic battle at Hogwarts, a lot of dark and a lot of good happened in this. So I'm just going to put it straight up. Maybe first position in perfect. No, maybe second. Yeah, maybe second position in perfect, because a lot did happen in this, and it did continue on from the Deathly Hallows Part 1, maybe like a couple of days after the Deathly Hallows Part 1 events. So a lot did happen in this, and it did begin with a really cool scene in Gringotts where they actually had to get in there to find another Horcrux. But Harry and his friends, I think, are still wanted, so they have to go in disguise again by using Polyjuice Potion. The whole part in Gringotts was really enjoyable because, like, they get on this dragon who's in prison there, and I think he's like the sort of protector in a way of like the sort of dark wizard, or just like vaults of like people, or like sort of wizards. So that was definitely interesting, but also really sad because they have this sort of contraption to actually protect themselves from the dragon where they shake it, and it actually makes the dragon really sort of upset. So that was quite interesting. And then once they get on the dragon, they like fly, and I thought that was really awesome to actually see that. A lot of really nice landscapes to see, and like as the dragon escapes, that was also really cool. And they actually do come back to Hogwarts, and I really enjoyed how they were in Gringotts, and like there was this sort of mechanism where there was like this sort of cat sound in a way, and it was like sort of a tracker in a way where if anyone tried to enter, it would just like make a bunch of sound to alert people. So I thought that was quite interesting, but also really annoying because it was quite a really annoying sound. And then they actually get to meet up with Aberforth, who is Dumbledore's, I think, older brother, maybe, I'm not 100% sure. So that was quite interesting. And then there's this part in like the small house where they're eating food and they meet Dumbledore's brother for the first time, so I thought that was quite cool. And then Neville comes through a painting after Aberforth like sort of tells Arya to get someone. I'm not 100% sure on how that actually worked, but it was really magical, no pun intended this time. And then they enter Hogwarts with Neville, and that was such a nice scene to see, just everyone like cheering for him and all that. And then there's this whole sort of part where Sirius, or not, why I keep saying Sirius for Severus Snape knows that Harry and his friends are there, so that was quite interesting. And then like this whole sort of assembly part with like Severus being there and explaining Harry Potter was sighted in Hogwarts, like everyone's shocked and all that, and like the people who know Harry's here are saying like quiet and all that. And then there's like this sort of like confrontation with Severus Snape, where Harry sort of confronts him, and I would have loved to seen a battle between Severus and Harry. It would have been really cool, but we got to see a nice battle between McGonagall and Severus, and then it does begin to like build up, because like the sort of main battle is only just beginning with like as they're defending the castle, because like they build this sort of, not build, like they sort of make this sort of big sort of protecty dome thingy majiggy, I don't even know what it was. Like they use, I think it's Protego Brutalis, I'm not 100% sure, and like they make this stone army, which was really cool by magic. And then just a bunch happened in this. I really liked how the battle began out quite slow. Nothing really major happened, but then it began to build up more and more until the final duel. And there was this really cool part where Harry actually got the tears of Severus Snape after Nagini killed him, because like we learned that Voldemort wanted the Elder One, and he actually did get that in the final moment of Deathly Hallows Part 1, but the only way to control it is if you kill the previous owner. And then Voldemort kills Snape, who was the previous owner, so then now Voldemort is now the new owner. So a lot of really cool stuff with that, but also quite confusing to grasp your head around. And then it was quite sad when Snape died, because like he says, I think he says like, you have your mother's eyes, so it's really sad. And he actually gives Harry the tears, and like he puts it into this sort of, what's it called, like a thing where Dumbledore used it in the Goblet of Fire, and then I think it was used once again in another movie, maybe number 5, not 100%. Yeah, number 5, not 100%. No, the HalfBlood Prince, what am I talking about? So then Harry enters it because, like, Snape, he uses his tears to, like, give a bunch of memories. So that was definitely really awesome to see, but also really sad because we get to learn that Severus had this sort of thing for Lily, who then later became married to James. So it was definitely interesting with that part, but also really sad to see this relationship like build up in this sort of memory part. We learn about how Severus cared for Harry in a way, but didn't really show it. So a lot of memory parts did happen in that, and that's probably my favourite moment from the film. And then we learn that the only way to kill Voldemort is if Harry is killed by Voldemort, because he is a Horcrux himself, because when he got the scar, half of the power was transferred to Harry, because like that's how he can speak to snakes, that's how he can see Voldemort's like visions. So I really liked how that part sort of played out. And then the very short part where Harry gives his life up was definitely quite sad, because like we really didn't expect Harry to do that in like in the first couple of minutes of the film. We really didn't expect Harry to like give himself up. So then like Harry's in, I'm really not sure if he's like in heaven or it's in his head, but I'm pretty sure it's in his head. He's like basically with Dumbledore, basically explaining a bunch of stuff, and like Dumbledore's explaining stuff to him. And like there's this part in the graveyard where Voldemort says Harry Potter is dead. And it's really sad to actually see that, because like everyone thinks he's dead, including Voldemort. But then there's this really cool part where he like sort of leaps out of Hagrid's hands, and like there's this really cool part where he shoots at Nagini, but like I'm pretty sure like Voldemort deflects it. I'm not 100% sure. And then to end it off, after like destroying the final Horcrux, which was Nagini, Harry and Voldemort have a pretty epic battle as like they sort of shoot their represented colors, which was red for Harry and then green for Voldemort. Really enjoyable battle with that, and I really love the ending, like how Voldemort sort of disappeared in like just sort of different sort of ashes, like he sort of stretched out in a way, and it sort of like evaporated just with sort of small parts of ash. So that was definitely quite interesting to actually see him die. And then it does cut to 19 years, but before that, something even sadder happened in this. We actually get to see one of Molly and, I was about to say Fred, but Arthur's children die, and I can never get this one right. I'm pretty sure it's Fred. I'm not 100% sure. It may be George. It was really sad to see Fred or George die, because like they're some of my favourite characters, and to actually just see everyone in the Weasley family so emotional about it was definitely great. But I really wish they had Harry like cry, because like he had such a great relationship with Fred and George, and to just like see him upset about it was really strange how he wasn't like crying in a way. It was quite a serious moment, because we also had, I was going to say Molly, but we had Lupin, and then, what's her name? Nymphadora, I believe her just name is Tonks. They were both dead, and they were so close to holding hands, which was even sadder. Now moving on to the 19 years part, that was such a really awesome moment. I liked how it just didn't like stop after like that sort of final battle part. It actually went to 19 years later, where it had basically Harry, Ginny, and their children, with just a bunch of like other Harry Potter characters like Malfoy, and we had Ron and Hermione with their children. I really like how it sort of almost was exactly like the same as the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone, but it was in sort of Harry's perspective this time. So that was definitely really cool. So, hope you guys did enjoy this tier listing making episode as much as I did making it, because I really did enjoy sharing my thoughts and opinions on my favourite Harry Potter movies. I would definitely love to hear your thoughts and opinions on your favourite Harry Potter movies. And as always, guys, hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I can actually so goodbye.